This 4-year-old beggar girl is called a thief and dragged by the hair from a store by a janitor. But a millionaire saw everything and did something that shocked everyone. Watch until the end. You won't regret it. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The shrill scream echoed through the convenience store like an alarm siren, cutting through the typical Saturday afternoon buzz in the neighborhood of Elmwood, Chicago. Franklin Hayes, 52, was choosing a bottle of water when he heard the desperate sound coming from the back of the store. His eyes quickly turned to the source of the noise, and what he saw made him drop the bottle on the floor. A burly man in a blue uniform was holding a girl who couldn't have been more than 4 years old by the hair. It was Randy, the store's janitor, his 45 years loaded with bitterness expressed in his red, angry face. The child was crying in despair as she was dragged through the aisles, her bare little feet barely touching the cold floor. "You filthy brat, trying to steal cookies in my store!" Randy yelled, shaking the girl like a rag doll. "You disgusting street urchins think you can just take anything." Franklin felt his blood boil. His naturally controlling personality couldn't stand injustice, especially against children. Without thinking twice, he crossed the store in long strides, his imposing stature as a successful businessman drawing the attention of other customers. "Let that child go right now," Franklin ordered, his deep voice echoing through the store with authority. Randy turned around, still holding the girl's hair. "Stay out of this, mister. This little punk was trying to steal." "I said let her go, now!" The firmness in Franklin's tone made Randy hesitate. He recognized the man by sight, always well-dressed, driving expensive cars, clearly someone with resources. Reluctantly, he released the child, who immediately ran to the nearest corner, shrinking like a wounded animal. Franklin crouched down to the girl's level. His brown eyes met two large, almond-shaped eyes full of tears. The child was too small, too thin, her dirty and torn clothes telling a story of deprivation that he rarely stopped to consider. "What's your name, sweetie?" he asked gently. "Willow," the girl whispered, her voice so low it could barely be heard. "Willow is a beautiful name." Franklin looked around and saw a package of cookies on the floor, near where the commotion had started. "Were you hungry?" The girl nodded timidly, her eyes down in shame. Franklin stood up and walked over to Randy, who was watching the scene with disdain. "How much do these cookies cost?" $2.50, Randy replied, confused. Franklin took a $50 bill from his wallet. "Here's the payment, and I want you to apologize to her." "Apologize? To a street kid? To a child you just assaulted for no reason? She didn't steal anything if I'm paying, did she?" Randy mumbled something that could be interpreted as an apology, but Franklin wasn't satisfied. He grabbed a basket and started filling it with basic items: bread, milk, cookies, fruit, water. His organized mind was already calculating what the most urgent needs of a child in a homeless situation would be. "Where's your family, Willow?" he asked as he put more items in the basket. "With Grandma Opal. She's waiting outside." Franklin paid the bill, which came to almost $200, and carried the bags. "Let's go find your grandma, then." Outside the store, under the awning of an abandoned commercial building, a 67-year-old woman waited sitting on a piece of cardboard. Opal had her gray hair tied in a simple bun. Her clothes were clean but worn from time. What caught Franklin's attention the most were her eyes, completely white, unfocused, moving without direction. "Willow? You took a while, honey. Did something happen?" Opal asked, reaching out to locate her granddaughter. "Grandma, a kind man helped me. He bought us food." Opal turned her face in the direction of Franklin's voice. "Sir, you didn't have to. We're not beggars." "I know, Mrs. Opal," Franklin replied, impressed by the woman's dignity. "My name is Franklin. I just wanted to help." "Opal Hayes, and thank you very much for your kindness." Franklin watched the two. Willow snuggled next to her grandmother with pure affection, her small hands guiding the blind woman's movements. There was something in that scene that touched a part of him that had been dormant for years. "Do you live here?" "For now," Opal replied. "We lost our apartment a few months ago. We're looking for a more suitable place." The answer was diplomatic, but Franklin perceived the reality behind the words. They were homeless, surviving as best they could. His internal conflict began to manifest. The same controlling nature that made him a successful businessman now screamed for him to do something more concrete to help. "Mrs. Opal, I would like to—" "Mr. Franklin," Opal interrupted gently, "your kindness today has already been more than enough. God will reward your generosity." Franklin handed over the bags and discreetly placed some bills of money in one of them. Can I visit you tomorrow?" "To see if you're okay?" Willow looked at him hopefully, but it was Opal who answered. "If that's your wish, sir, we'll be here." As he walked back to his car, a black BMW parked on the corner, Franklin couldn't get the image of Willow's big eyes and Opal's silent dignity out of his mind. Married to Beverly for 15 years, he had a comfortable life, a thriving company, but always felt that something important was missing. As he drove through the bustling streets of Chicago, he passed several homeless people and children in vulnerable situations that he had always ignored before. Today, for the first time, each face bothered him deeply. He arrived home, a spacious apartment in Lincoln Park, still disturbed by the encounter. Beverly was on the balcony, watering her plants. At 48, she maintained the natural beauty that had attracted him decades ago, but her eyes carried a constant sadness that had intensified over the years. When he told her about the episode at the store, she listened to him in silence. "Franklin, you can't save all the children in the world," she finally said. "I don't want to save them all, but this one, there's something different about this girl, Beverly." "Different how?" Franklin couldn't explain. There was something in Willow's eyes that had awakened a paternal instinct that he thought he didn't possess. "I'm going to visit them tomorrow." Beverly sighed. "Do what you think is best, but don't get too emotionally involved. People in homeless situations, it's complicated." That night, Franklin had trouble sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Willow's hair being pulled by Randy, heard her cries of pain and fear. For the first time in years, he felt that the universe had placed a specific responsibility in his path. The next morning, Franklin woke up earlier than usual. The clock read 6:30 when he was already up, making coffee and organizing a new bag with supplies. Beverly was still asleep, and he preferred not to wake her. He knew she didn't fully approve of his decision to get involved with strangers from the street, as she had said the night before. At 8 o'clock, he parked near the place where he had left Willow and Opal. The morning hustle of Chicago was already intense, with street vendors setting up their stalls and the characteristic smell of hot dogs and coffee mixing with the hot and humid air of the city. He walked to the awning of the abandoned building and found the two exactly where he had left them. Willow was the first to notice him. Her eyes lit up with a genuine joy that made Franklin's chest tighten. "Grandma, it's the kind man," she exclaimed, running towards him. "Good morning, Mr. Franklin," Opal said, trying to get up with difficulty. "We didn't expect to see you so early." "I brought some more things," he replied, noting that the two seemed to have slept right there, on the cardboard. "How did you spend the night?" "Well, thank God," Opal lied diplomatically. But Franklin noticed that Willow was shaking slightly, and that both seemed not to have slept properly. As he handed over the supplies, Franklin began to ask more specific questions. He discovered that Opal had been an elementary school teacher for over 40 years before retiring. She lost her sight 3 years ago due to undiagnosed diabetes, and since then depended completely on Willow for basic guidance. "Were you a teacher?" Franklin asked, impressed by Opal's evident articulation and intelligence. "All my life. I taught hundreds of children to read and write," she replied proudly. "Willow here already knows the whole alphabet, right, honey?" The girl nodded shyly. Franklin asked her to recite the alphabet and was surprised by the clarity and accuracy with which she did it. At 4 years old, Willow demonstrated an intelligence well above average. "How did you end up here?" he asked delicately. Opal's face hardened for a moment. "My small pension no longer covered the rent after they increased the value. The landlord evicted us 4 months ago. Since then, we've been looking for a solution." "And your family?" "We don't have anyone else," Opal said simply. "Willow is all I have left in the world." During the next few days, Franklin established a routine. Every morning, before going to the office, he stopped to visit Willow and Opal. He brought food, clean clothes he bought specifically for them, and mainly offered company. He discovered that Opal had an impressive wisdom about life and a remarkable ability to find beauty even in the most difficult circumstances. "Mr. Franklin," Opal said on one of those visits, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Mrs. Opal." "Do you have children?" The question hit Franklin like a punch in the stomach. "No, my wife and we couldn't have children." "I understand," Opal said gently. "Sometimes God has different plans than ours." Willow, who was playing with a rag doll that Franklin had brought, raised her big eyes to him. "Uncle Franklin, did you want to have a little girl like me?" The girl's innocent question left him speechless. Yes, he wanted to. He always wanted to. And looking at Willow, he felt something he had never experienced before, a genuine and spontaneous paternal love. At home, Beverly began to notice changes in her husband's behavior. He came home later from the office, seemed more thoughtful, and frequently mentioned the girl and the grandmother in their conversations. One night, she decided to confront him. "Franklin, you're getting too involved with these people. They have names, Beverly, Willow and Opal. The names don't matter. You can't solve the problems of everyone you meet on the street. It's not everyone. It's a 4-year-old child who sleeps on the floor and a blind woman who used to be a teacher. They deserve dignity." Beverly sighed, the frustration evident in her voice. "And what do you intend to do? Adopt them? Bankroll them for the rest of your life?" "I don't know yet. I just know I can't pretend I don't know them." "Franklin, you're trying to fill a void that can't be filled like that. We've talked about this 1,000 times." The discussion escalated quickly. Beverly accused Franklin of using Willow and Opal's situation to escape the real problems of their marriage. He retorted, saying that she had shut down emotionally since they discovered their infertility 15 years ago, and that he was just trying to do something meaningful with his life. "Do you want to know the truth?" Beverly shouted, tears streaming down her face. "I'm afraid that you'll fall in love with that girl and abandon me for good." Her words echoed in the silent apartment. Franklin realized that he had touched on something much deeper than he imagined. Beverly wasn't just resisting the idea of him helping Willow and Opal. She was afraid of being replaced. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Franklin went to visit Willow and Opal earlier than usual. He found the girl crying and Opal trying to comfort her. "What happened?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Willow had nightmares again," Opal explained. "She always gets like this when she sees people in uniform." "Uniform?" "Any uniform. Police officers, security guards, janitors. Something happened to her before, but she's too small to explain." Franklin crouched down next to Willow. "Do you want to tell me about your bad dream?" Willow shook her head, hiding in Opal's chest. It was evident that the child carried deep traumas that went far beyond the current situation of vulnerability. "Uncle Franklin," Willow whispered after a few minutes, "are you going to leave and never come back?" "Why are you asking that?" "Because everyone leaves. Mommy left, Daddy left, and now Grandma can't see me anymore." The girl's words broke Franklin's heart. He understood that Willow wasn't just asking for food or shelter. She was asking for constancy, for someone to stay. "I'm not going anywhere, Willow. I promise." "You really promise?" "I promise." That afternoon, Franklin made a decision that would change everything. He called Beverly from the office. "Beverly, I need you to come with me tomorrow. I want you to meet Willow and Opal." "Franklin, I already said that. Please, just come meet them. 5 minutes. If after that you still think I'm wrong, I'll stop visiting them." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Beverly agreed. The next day, Franklin took Beverly to the awning where Willow and Opal lived. Beverly resisted all the way, claiming that it was a waste of time and that he was being too emotional. But when they arrived at the place and she saw the 4-year-old girl playing with pieces of cardboard on the floor, something changed in her expression. "Uncle Franklin," Willow shouted, running to hug him, "you brought the pretty lady." Beverly was surprised by the child's spontaneity. Willow approached her without fear, her big and curious eyes studying the woman's face. "Are you Uncle Franklin's wife?" Willow asked with her typical innocence. "I am," Beverly replied, automatically crouching down to be at the girl's height. "Why do you always look sad?" Willow's direct and innocent question hit Beverly like a well-aimed arrow in the heart. Willow's question echoed in the morning silence like a painful echo. Beverly froze, her eyes filling with tears she struggled to contain. For 15 years, no one had asked such a direct question about her constant sadness, not even Franklin. I don't know how to answer that," Beverly murmured, her voice trembling. Willow, with her keen, childlike perception, noticed the woman's discomfort. "Grandma Opal always says that when someone is sad, a hug can help. Can I give you a hug?" Without waiting for an answer, the girl wrapped Beverly in her skinny little arms. The spontaneous gesture broke down all the emotional barriers that Beverly had built. She began to cry silently, squeezing the child against her chest. Franklin watched the scene with a mixture of emotion and concern. Opal, even without seeing, perceived the tension in the air. "Willow has this special ability," the older woman said gently. "She senses when people need affection." During the following minutes, while Beverly regained her composure, Opal told stories from her time as a teacher. She spoke about the importance of education, about how each child had a unique potential waiting to be developed. Beverly listened fascinated, impressed with the wisdom and dignity of the woman who lived in such precarious conditions. "Mrs. Opal," Beverly said hesitantly, "how do you manage to maintain this hope? Honey, when you have a child to take care of, there's no room for despair. Willow needs me strong, so I need to be strong." Opal's words touched Beverly deeply. She looked at Willow, who was playing with some colorful buttons that Franklin had brought, organizing them by color with an impressive concentration for her age. "She's very smart," Beverly commented. "Willow learns everything very quickly," Opal confirmed with pride. "Just yesterday she managed to count to 50. Before she's 5, I'm sure she'll be reading perfectly." When they finally said goodbye, Beverly was visibly shaken. During the drive back, she remained silent, processing everything she had seen and felt. At home, she sat on the balcony and said to Franklin, "I understand now why you can't forget them. And what do you think we should do? I don't know yet, but maybe we can help in a more systematic way. That child has potential, and Mrs. Opal, she doesn't deserve to live on the street." In the following days, Franklin and Beverly began to visit Willow and Opal together. Beverly brought clean clothes for the girl and hygiene products for both of them. They discovered that they could rent a nearby public restroom so that they could wash properly. Small gestures that made a huge difference in the dignity of the two. It was during one of these visits that they witnessed something disturbing. Randy, the store's janitor, appeared on the awning where they stayed. Well, the princesses and their rich protectors," he said sarcastically. "I thought you had disappeared from here." "What do you want?" Franklin asked, instinctively placing himself between Randy and Willow. "This is a commercial area. Beggars can't stay here. It's hurting the store's traffic." "They're not bothering anyone," Beverly retorted, surprising herself with her firmness. "Look at that. The lady now defends a bum." Randy approached threateningly. "You won't always be here to protect them. And when you're not..." The threat wasn't completed, but it was clear in the air. Willow hid behind Opal, trembling visibly. It was evident that Randy represented much more than a simple antipathy. He was a real threat to their safety. After Randy left, Franklin made a drastic decision. "I can't leave you here exposed to that man," he said. "I'm going to rent a room for you." "Mr. Franklin, that's too much kindness," Opal protested. "We have no way to repay you." "You don't need to repay anything. Willow needs a safe place to sleep." Franklin found a small boarding house in the Elmwood neighborhood, close to where they used to stay. It was simple but clean and safe. The room had a double bed, a small bathroom, and a window overlooking a quiet inner courtyard. When Willow saw the room, her eyes lit up as if it were a palace. "Grandma, there's a real bed and a bathroom just for us," she exclaimed, running through the small area. That night, for the first time in months, Willow and Opal slept in a real bed, with clean sheets and security. Franklin and Beverly returned home, feeling that they had done something really meaningful. But the happiness was short-lived. 3 weeks later, Franklin arrived at the boarding house and found Willow alone, crying in the hallway. "Where's your grandma?" he asked, alarmed. "Grandma can't get out of bed. She's very sick," Willow sobbed. Franklin entered the room and found Opal with a high fever, delirious and clearly very ill. She had hidden her condition so as not to worry Willow, but now she was too sick to pretend. "Mrs. Opal, we're going to take you to the hospital," he said, already picking up the phone to call an ambulance. "No, I don't have money for a hospital," Opal murmured. "Don't worry about that now." At the hospital, doctors discovered that Opal had severe pneumonia, complicated by uncontrolled diabetes. Her blood pressure was dangerously high, and she would need to be hospitalized for several days, maybe weeks. "And the girl?" asked the hospital social worker. "She can't stay alone." Franklin looked at Willow, who clung to his leg as if he were her only anchor in the world. The child was terrified of the possibility of losing Opal as well. "Uncle Franklin, is Grandma going to die like Mom and Dad?" Willow asked, her tears wetting his shirt. "No, sweetie, Grandma will get better. The doctors will take good care of her." "But where will I stay?" The question echoed in the hospital hallway as a direct challenge to his values and priorities. Franklin knew that he had reached a point of no return. He could no longer be just a good Samaritan who visited occasionally. Willow needed constant care, and he was the only person she trusted. "You're going to stay with us," he said, without consulting Beverly, knowing that he was making a decision that would completely change their lives. That night, Willow slept in Franklin and Beverly's apartment for the first time. The girl was amazed by the space, with the big television, with the soft bed in the guest room. But she was also clearly scared and insecure. "Uncle Franklin," she whispered when he went to say goodnight, "you're not going to send me away, are you?" "No, Willow, you're safe here. And when Grandma gets out of the hospital, we're going to take care of both of you." But Franklin knew that he was promising something that not even he fully understood. How would this work in the long term? What legal implications existed? And mainly, how would Beverly react when the reality of the situation became evident? In the early morning, Willow woke up screaming, having nightmares. Beverly was the first to arrive at the room, finding the girl in a panic, sweating cold, and calling for Opal. "It's okay, honey, you're safe," Beverly said, instinctively hugging the child. "I dreamed that Grandma left like Mom and Dad," Willow cried. "Grandma's not leaving. She's in the hospital getting better." Beverly spent the rest of the early morning talking quietly with Willow, telling stories and singing lullabies that she hadn't sung in years. When Franklin woke up in the morning, he found the two sleeping together in the guest room bed, Willow snuggled in Beverly's arms. For the first time in 15 years, Beverly seemed at peace with herself. But Franklin knew that the real challenges were just beginning. The following days were an emotional roller coaster for everyone. Willow adapted quickly to the new routine, but her nights were tormented by constant nightmares. Beverly discovered maternal instincts that she believed she had lost forever. while Franklin struggled with practical issues that he had never considered. How to enroll a child in school without proper documentation, what were the legal procedures for taking care of a minor, and mainly, how to balance this new responsibility with his business. The construction materials company began to suffer from his constant absence. Franklin cancelled important meetings to stay in the hospital with Opal, and his partners began to question his priorities. In a particularly tense meeting, his main partner, Calvin, confronted him directly. "Franklin, you need to decide whether you want to be a businessman or a social worker. The company is losing contracts because of your absences." "It's a temporary situation, Calvin. Everything will go back to normal soon." "Normal? You're raising a child who isn't even yours." "That's not normal, that's crazy." Calvin's words echoed in Franklin's mind all the way home. Was he being irresponsible? Was he jeopardizing his life, built on an emotional impulse? When he arrived home, he found Beverly teaching Willow to write her first words. The girl was concentrated, her tongue sticking out in a sign of effort, trying to form the letters of her own name. "Look, Uncle Franklin, I wrote Willow," she shouted proudly, showing the paper with crooked but legible letters. At that moment, all of Franklin's doubts dissipated. It didn't matter the lost contracts or the criticism from the partners. The sparkle in Willow's eyes was worth any sacrifice. Opal's recovery was slower than expected. The doctors discovered that her diabetes was very advanced and that the blindness, initially attributed to the disease, had components that could be treated with surgery. But the procedure was expensive and risky. "Mr. Franklin," Opal said during one of his visits, "I need to tell you something important about Willow." "What is it, Mrs. Opal?" Opal hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. "Willow, she's not my biological granddaughter." The words hit Franklin like lightning. "What do you mean?" "I found her 2 years ago, abandoned in a park. She was hungry, dirty, clearly had been mistreated. I never managed to find out who her real parents were. I'm afraid that if the authorities found out, they would take her to an orphanage." The revelation completely changed Franklin's perspective on the situation. Willow was officially an abandoned child. This created legal possibilities that he hadn't considered, but also immense complications. "Does anyone else know about this?" "No one, and I beg you to keep it that way. Willow calls me Grandma, and I love her as if she were my blood granddaughter." Franklin promised to keep the secret, but his mind was already working on the implications. If Willow had no known family, there was a legal possibility of adoption, but that also meant that someone could question it if they discovered the truth. 2 weeks later, when Opal was finally discharged from the hospital, a new crisis arose. Randy appeared at Franklin's apartment. "How did you find out my address?" Franklin asked, blocking the entrance. "I have my methods," Randy replied with a malicious smile. "I came to talk about the girl." "What girl?" "The brat you're raising. Willow, isn't it? I found out interesting things about her." Franklin's blood ran cold. "What do you want? It turns out I know the real story of that child, and I know you have no legal rights over her." Randy approached, his voice low and threatening. $1,000 a month, and I keep my mouth shut. You're trying to blackmail me. I'm offering a service, information protection, because if I told the authorities that you're illegally raising a minor, well, it would be very complicated for you, wouldn't it? Franklin felt the anger boiling in his veins, but he knew that reacting with violence would only worsen the situation. "Get out of my house, now! Think about my proposal." "I have a week of patience." After Randy left, Franklin told Beverly everything. She was horrified, but her reaction surprised him. "Franklin, maybe it's time to formalize our situation with Willow." "What do you mean?" "Adoption. If she really has no family, we can try to adopt her legally." The idea was simultaneously exciting and terrifying. Franklin had always wanted to be a father, but adoption was a complex, time-consuming process, and there were no guarantees. What if they don't approve our request? What if they do? Willow would have a real family and Randy would have nothing against us. They began to research the adoption process in the United States. They discovered that it was complicated, bureaucratic, and that it would take months, possibly years. But they also discovered that stable couples with good financial situations and adequate housing had good chances of approval. During this period, something unexpected happened. The doctors who were taking care of Opal managed to completely stabilize her diabetes and determined that her partial blindness could be reversed with surgery. The procedure would cost $50,000, a significant amount even for Franklin. "Mr. Franklin," Opal said during a visit, "I want to pay for your surgery." "Mrs. Franklin, that's too much generosity. I can't accept." "You can. Willow needs her grandmother seeing, and I can pay." The surgery was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, Franklin hired a lawyer specializing in family law to begin the adoption process for Willow. The lawyer was clear about the challenges. Without proper documentation about the abandonment, it would be necessary to publish notices looking for biological relatives, wait for legal deadlines, undergo psychological and social evaluations. "It's a long process," the lawyer explained, "but you have a suitable profile, and the fact that the child is already adapted with you will be considered positively." On the day of Opal's surgery, the whole family waited anxiously in the hospital. Willow didn't fully understand what was happening, but she perceived the adults' tension. "Aunt Beverly," she asked, "will Grandma be able to see me again?" "We hope so, sweetie." "And then you'll still want to keep me?" The innocent question broke Beverly's heart. "Willow, we want you with us forever. Do you understand what that means? That you're going to be my new family?" "Exactly." Willow smiled, a genuine and happy smile that lit up the entire hospital hallway. The surgery was a success. When Opal opened her eyes and saw Willow's face for the first time in 3 years, both cried with joy. "My girl has grown so big," Opal said, caressing the child's face. "Grandma, now you can see me drawing." Opal's regained sight coincided with the advancement of the adoption process. 6 months later, Franklin and Beverly received preliminary approval to adopt Willow. Bureaucratic steps were still missing, but the path was open. Randy, discovering that they had initiated the legal process, tried one last blackmail attempt. But with the situation regularized, his threats completely lost their power. A year after the first encounter at the convenience store, Franklin, Beverly, and Willow were at the courthouse, finalizing the adoption process. Opal, now with partially restored vision, was present as a witness. "Willow," asked the judge, "do you want Franklin and Beverly to be your parents?" "Yes, I do, Your Honor," she replied enthusiastically. "They're already my heart parents." When the judge's gavel struck, formalizing the adoption, Beverly finally understood that her life had not been incomplete for not being able to have children biologically. It had been preserved for that specific moment, for that specific child who needed exactly the love she had to offer. Willow, now legally the daughter of Franklin and Beverly Hayes, grew up in a home filled with love, with Opal living in a house nearby, continuing to be the girl's chosen grandmother. Franklin discovered that being a father was infinitely more rewarding than any business success, and Beverly found in motherhood the cure for a sadness she had carried for 15 years. Years later, when Willow was already a bright young woman studying education, she said to her parents, "Thank you for proving to me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice, love, and constant presence." And so, a simple act of kindness in a convenience store turned into the story of how 3 lives met exactly when they needed each other most. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.